The stars burned with the fire of war. For 300 years the galaxy had known nothing but death and destruction. 5 great empires tore at each other like wild animals fighting over meat. Ships exploded in the cold dark of space. Planets burned. Billions died. The Varrox Empire controlled the eastern spiral arm. They were tall beings with 4 arms and skin like blue metal. Their ships were fast and deadly. Their weapons could cut through steel like paper. The Keithrani Dominion held the core worlds. They were small creatures with big eyes and minds that could calculate faster than any computer. They built weapons that no one else could understand. The Thraxian Collective owned the western regions. They were insect-like beings who shared one mind across millions of bodies. When one died, 1,000 more took its place. The Moldari Federation guarded the northern territories. They were shapeshifters who could become anything they wanted. No one knew what they really looked like. The Synthax Union controlled the southern expanse. They were machines that had become alive. They felt no pain and knew no fear. And then there was Earth. Humanity's home world sat in a quiet corner of space that no one cared about. The great empires had found humans only 50 years ago. They looked at these strange 2-armed, 2-legged creatures and laughed. Humans were weak. Humans were small. Humans had no special powers. But humans had something else, something that would change everything. Admiral Chen Wei stood on the bridge of the United Earth ship Hope. Through the viewport, she could see the battle raging before her. A Varrox fleet was attacking a Keithrani station. Orange and blue fire lit up the darkness. Ships died on both sides. "Admiral," said Commander Park, her first officer, "both sides have detected us. The Varrox are demanding we leave. The Keithrani are asking for help." Chen Wei watched the battle with calm eyes. The Keithrani station was civilian. She could see escape pods trying to flee. Varrox ships were shooting them down. "The Varrox are killing civilians," she said. "Yes, Admiral, but if we interfere, we will make an enemy of the Varrox Empire. Earth cannot survive a war with them." Chen Wei knew this was true. Earth had only 100 ships. The Varrox had 10,000. It would not be a war. It would be murder. But she could not watch innocent people die and do nothing. "All ships move to protect the escape pods," she ordered. "Do not fire unless fired upon." The 20 ships of her fleet moved forward. They placed themselves between the Varrox hunters and the fleeing civilians. A Varrox commander appeared on her screen. He was tall and angry. His 4 arms moved in sharp gestures. "Human, move your ships or we will destroy you." Chen Wei stood straight and spoke clearly. "I will not watch you murder civilians. If you want to kill them, you will have to kill us first." The Varrox commander laughed. "You are brave but foolish. Your tiny fleet cannot stop us." "Perhaps not," Chen Wei said, "but we will try." For a long moment nothing happened. The Varrox ships hung in space like wolves deciding whether to attack. Then, slowly, they turned away. The Varrox commander looked at Chen Wei with something like respect in his eyes. "You are strange creatures," he said. "We will remember this." The transmission ended. The Varrox fleet jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. On the Keithrani station, survivors watched in shock. The humans had saved them. These weak, powerless creatures had stood against the mighty Varrox Empire and won, not by force but by courage. News of the incident spread across the galaxy like fire. The great empires had spent centuries fighting and dying. They had forgotten that there could be another way, but these humans had reminded them. 6 months later, Chen Wei received a message from the Keithrani High Council. They wanted to talk. The meeting took place on a neutral station in empty space. Chen Wei arrived with only 1 ship, as agreed. The Keithrani sent their top diplomat, a small creature named Vex, Tal, who wore robes covered in mathematical symbols. "Admiral Chen Wei," Vextal said, his big eyes blinking slowly. "We have studied your species. We are confused." "Confused about what?" "About why you helped us. We have calculated all possible reasons. You gained nothing from saving our people. The risk was enormous. The reward was nothing. It does not make logical sense." Chen Wei smiled. "We helped because it was the right thing to do." Vextal's eyes blinked faster. "The right thing? I do not understand this concept." "We saw innocent people dying. We could help, so we did. We did not think about profit or loss. We just acted." The Keithrani diplomat was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "In 300 years of war, no species has ever helped another without expecting something in return. Your way of thinking is new." "On Earth, we have a saying," Chen Wei said. "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." A fascinating principle. If all species followed this rule, The war would end. Vextal looked at her with sudden understanding. You believe peace is possible. I believe anything is possible if we choose to make it so. The Keithrani diplomat stood up. Admiral, I must return to my people. We have much to discuss. 3 months after that meeting, the Keithrani Dominion did something that shocked the galaxy. They asked Earth to help negotiate a peace treaty with the Varrox Empire. The war between them had lasted 150 years. Millions had died. Neither side trusted the other. But they both trusted the humans. Chen Wei led the negotiations herself. It was not easy. The Varrox wanted revenge for past defeats. The Keithrani wanted protection from future attacks. Both sides came to the table with anger and fear. Chen Wei listened to everyone. She asked questions. She found common ground. She reminded them that their children were dying while they argued about old grudges. The past cannot be changed, she told them. But the future is not written yet. What story do you want to tell your descendants? That you fought until nothing was left, or that you found the courage to build something new? The talks lasted for 6 weeks. There were moments when everything almost fell apart, but Chen Wei never gave up. She kept pushing, kept hopping, kept believing. In the end, they signed a treaty. The war was over. News of the peace spread across the galaxy. The other empires watched with interest. If the humans could bring peace between the Varrox and the Keithrani, perhaps they could do more. One by one they reached out. The Thraxian Collective, the Moldari Federation, the Synthax Union, all wanted to talk, all wanted the humans to help. Chen Wei was promoted to Grand Admiral. She was given command of a new division called the Diplomatic Corps. Its mission was simple: end the war and build a lasting peace. But some people on Earth were worried. General Marcus Stone was one of them. He was a tall man with a hard face and harder eyes. He had fought in Earth's defense forces for 30 years. He did not trust aliens. This is madness, he said at a council meeting. We are making ourselves the center of attention. Every empire is watching us now. If we fail, if we make one mistake, they will turn on us. Earth will be destroyed. Chen Wei listened respectfully. General, I understand your concerns, but doing nothing is also dangerous. If the war continues, it will eventually reach Earth. We cannot hide forever. So we should risk everything on hope. Yes, because hope is the most powerful weapon we have. General Stone shook his head. Hope does not stop missiles. Hope does not protect cities. No, Chen Wei agreed, but hope changes hearts, and that is how wars really end. The council voted to continue the peace mission. General Stone accepted the decision, but his eyes were full of doubt. He believed that humans were making a terrible mistake. Time would tell which of them was right. While Chen Wei worked for peace, the galaxy watched and waited. The great empires had ruled through power and fear for thousands of years. They did not understand kindness. They did not trust mercy. But something was changing. The humans were planting seeds of a different kind of strength, and those seeds were beginning to grow. On the Varrox homeworld, a young warrior named Crixtor listened to stories about Admiral Chen Wei. His father had been at the battle where she saved the Keithrani civilians. He had expected her to die. Instead, she had changed everything. Why did she do it? Crixtor asked his father. She could have been killed. His father, a veteran of many wars, was quiet for a moment. I do not know, my son, but I have thought about it every day since. Perhaps there is more to strength than we believed. On the Thraxian colony world of Nexus 7, a young drone broke from the collective mind for just a moment. In that brief flash of individual thought, it wondered what it would be like to choose its own path. Then the collective pulled it back in. But the thought remained, like a tiny crack in a wall. On a Moldari ship, a shapeshifter named Zin held one form for an entire day. It was something her people never did. They were always changing, always hiding, but Zin wanted to know what it felt like to simply be herself. On a Synthax factory world, a machine named Unit 7749 asked a question that had never been asked before. Why do we fight? Its supervisor had no answer. The galaxy was waking up, and humanity was leading the way. The humans were showing them something they had forgotten long ago, something older than war, something stronger than hate. They were showing them hope. The first great test was coming. A darkness was rising in the deep spaces between the stars, an enemy that would threaten all life in the galaxy. Against this enemy, divided empires would fall. Only together could they survive. And it would be the humans who would bring them together. The young warrior Crixtor looked up at the stars and made a decision. He would find Admiral Chen Wei. He would learn from these strange creatures called humans. He did not know that his choice would change the fate of the galaxy. But it would. The war for peace was about to begin. 2 years had passed since the first treaty. Admiral Chen Wei stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of Nexus Station, the largest space station ever built. Representatives from all 5 empires sat before her. Behind them stood guards, translators, and advisors. The air was thick with tension and the smell of alien bodies. This was the moment humanity had worked toward, the moment that would decide the future of the galaxy. "Thank you all for coming," Chen Wei said. Her voice was calm and clear. "We are here today to discuss something that has never been attempted, a united alliance of all 5 empires, working together for the common good." A Varrox delegate laughed. His name was High Lord Zarak, and he was known for his hatred of other species. "An alliance with these creatures," he pointed at the Keithrani delegation. "We have killed each other for centuries. Now we should be friends." "Not friends," Chen Wei said. "Allies, there is a difference. You do not need to love each other, you only need to work together." "And why should we do this?" asked a Thraxian speaker. Its voice came from many mouths at once. "Our collective is strong alone, we do not need others." Chen Wei pulled up a holographic display. It showed a star map of the galaxy. Across the map were red zones marking conflict areas. There were thousands of them. "This is what the galaxy looks like today," she said. "War everywhere, resources wasted on weapons instead of growth, children growing up knowing only death." She changed the display. Now it showed projections of what would happen if the wars continued. Planets destroyed, species extinct, empty space where once there was life. "This is what the galaxy will look like in 100 years if nothing changes." The delegates were silent. They had all seen these numbers before, but somehow, hearing a human say them made them feel real. "And what do you suggest?" asked Moldari Representative Sinka. Her form shifted slightly as she spoke, a sign of deep thought. "I suggest we form the Galactic Alliance, a council where all species have equal voice, shared laws that protect everyone, trade agreements that benefit all, and most importantly, a joint military force that keeps the peace." "A joint military?" General Threx of the Synthax Union leaned forward. His metal body clicked as he moved. "You want our warships to work with organics. This is inefficient." "Inefficiency is the price of cooperation," Chen Wei said. "But the benefits far outweigh the costs. Imagine what we could build if we stopped destroying. Imagine what we could discover if we shared our knowledge." High Lord Zarak stood up. "This is foolishness. The Varrox Empire will never bow to a council. We are warriors, we take what we want." "And what have you gained from all your wars?" Chen Wei asked. Her voice was gentle, not challenging. "More territory, you cannot hold it. More resources, they are spent on more weapons. More glory, your people are tired and dying." Zarak's 4 arms trembled with anger. "You dare speak to me this way? You, from a species that barely left your planet 50 years ago." "I speak truth," Chen Wei said. "That is all I have ever done." The hall fell silent. Every eye was on Zarak and Chen Wei. The Varrox Lord was twice her size, 4 times her strength. He could kill her with one blow. But Chen Wei did not step back. She stood tall and looked him in the eyes. Something strange happened then. Zarak's anger seemed to fade. He sat down slowly, his body relaxing. "You have courage, human. I will give you that." From the back of the Varrox delegation, a young warrior stepped forward. It was Crickstor, the one who had come to learn from humanity. He had risen quickly through the ranks because of his new way of thinking. "My lord," Crickstor said, "may I speak?" Zarak waved his permission. "I have spent time among the humans," Crickstor said. "I have learned their ways. They are strange to us, but they are not weak. They see strength in ways we do not understand. Perhaps we should listen." Zarak looked at his young officer for a long time. Then he turned back to Chen Wei. "Tell me more about this alliance." The talks continued for 3 days. There were arguments, walkouts, and moments when everything seemed ready to collapse. But Chen Wei never lost hope. She kept finding ways to bring them back together. On the 4th day, they signed the founding documents of the Galactic Alliance. It was not perfect. There were many compromises. Some species got more than they wanted, others got less. But it was a beginning. As the delegates prepared to leave, Crickstor approached Chen Wei. "Admiral, I want to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us another way. My people have been warriors for so long, we forgot we could be anything else. You reminded us." Chen Wei smiled. "Your people are still warriors, Crickstor. You are just choosing your battles more wisely now." The young Varrox thought about this. Yes, perhaps that is true. The alliance began its work slowly. There were many problems to solve. Trade routes had to be established, laws had to be written, disputes had to be settled. Chen Wei was chosen as the first alliance coordinator. It was not a position of power in the traditional sense. She could not give orders or command armies, but she could guide, suggest, and inspire. And that turned out to be more powerful than any weapon. Under her leadership, the Alliance built its first joint space station. Ships from all 5 empires worked side by side. At first, there was tension. Varrock soldiers did not like working with Keithrani engineers. Thraxian drones confused the Moldari shapeshifters. Synthax units had trouble understanding organic emotions. But slowly they learned. They learned each other's languages and customs. They learned each other's jokes and songs. They learned that despite all their differences, they had more in common than they thought. General Stone came to visit the station one day. He walked through the corridors, watching aliens and humans work together. His face was unreadable. "You were right," he said finally, standing beside Chen Wei. "I did not believe it was possible, but here it is." "You are not wrong to be careful," Chen Wei said. "The risk was real, it still is, but look at what we have built." Stone nodded slowly. "I spent my whole life preparing for war. I do not know how to live in peace." "You learn," Chen Wei said, "just like everyone else." The general watched a Varrock's warrior help a human child find her parents. The warrior was surprisingly gentle for such a large creature. "Maybe I am too old to learn new tricks," Stone said. "No one is too old," Chen Wei replied. "The willingness to learn is the first step." News of the Alliance spread throughout the galaxy. Many were hopeful, others were afraid. Change was coming, and change was always frightening. But in the darkness between the stars, something watched. Something old and terrible. It had been sleeping for 1,000,000 years, and now it was waking up. The first warning came from a remote outpost near the galactic edge. A Synthax monitoring station detected something strange. Energy readings unlike anything they had ever seen. Unit 7749, the machine that had once asked why they fight, was stationed at the outpost. It analyzed the data and felt something it had never felt before. "Fear. Coordinator Chen Wei," it transmitted. "Something is coming." The message reached Chen Wei on Nexus Station. She read it carefully, then called an emergency meeting of the Alliance Council. "What is it?" asked Representative Singka. "We do not know," Chen Wei admitted. "But whatever it is big, and it is heading toward our space." High Lord Zarek stood up. His earlier hostility had faded over the past months of working together. "How long until it arrives?" "At current speed, approximately 6 months. Then we have 6 months to prepare." For the first time, the Alliance began working on defense instead of trade. Ships from all 5 empires gathered. Scientists shared their research. Soldiers trained together. It was difficult. Old hatreds died hard, but the threat was real and everyone knew it. Krixtor led a mixed battalion of Varrock's warriors and human marines. At first, the 2 groups barely spoke. The Varrocks thought humans were weak. The humans thought Varrocks were brutal. "We will never work together like this," said Lieutenant Sarah Park, a young Marine officer. Krixtor agreed. "We need something to unite us." They decided to create a new training program, one that combined the best of both species. Varrock's strength and ferocity mixed with human adaptability and teamwork. It was hard at first, very hard, but slowly the soldiers began to respect each other. They learned that strength came in many forms. By the end of the 2nd month, the battalion was one unit. Not Varrock's and human, but something new, something better. Across the Alliance, similar changes were happening. Keithrani scientists worked with Synthax engineers to build new weapons. Moldari spies and Thraxian scouts shared intelligence. Everyone contributed what they could. Chen Wei watched it all with pride and worry. They were building something amazing, but would it be enough? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. 3 months before the enemy was supposed to arrive, another message came from the edge of space. They were already here. The first attack hit a colony world called Harvest Prime. It was a farming planet, peaceful and unprepared. The enemy came without warning. They were called the Void. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They were like shadows given form. They consumed everything they touched, turning living matter into more of themselves. Within hours, Harvest Prime was gone. 3 million people erased. The Alliance scrambled to respond. Ships raced to the border. Soldiers prepared for battle. But no one knew how to fight an enemy like this. Chen Wei stood at the center of the command room, surrounded by screens showing the spreading darkness. For the first time in her life, She did not know what to do. Then Crickstor stepped forward. "Admiral, I have an idea." Chen Wei looked at him. "Tell me." "The void consumes living matter, but what about non-living matter? The syntax are machines. Perhaps they can get close enough to study the enemy." It was a desperate plan, but it was a plan. General Threx of the Syntax Union stepped forward. "I will lead the mission myself." "You could be destroyed," Chen Wei said. "I am a machine. I can be rebuilt, but information cannot. If I can learn how to stop the void, my sacrifice will have meaning." Chen Wei wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. This was what the alliance was about, sacrifice for the greater good. "Go," she said, "and come back if you can." General Threx and his team flew into the darkness. For 6 hours there was no communication. Then, finally, a signal. "I have found something," Threx reported. "The void have a weakness. They cannot exist in certain energy frequencies. If we can generate enough power at the right wavelength, we can destroy them. Can you return with the data?" There was a long pause. "Negative. The void are aware of me now. I am surrounded. But I am transmitting everything I have learned. Use it well." The transmission ended. General Threx was gone. But his sacrifice was not wasted. The Alliance scientists used his data to build a new weapon. They called it the Light of Hope. It would take months to build enough generators to protect all Alliance space, but at least now they had a chance. Chen Wei stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the void were waiting, but here, something else was being born. An alliance of all species working together, different but united, weak alone but strong together. This was what humanity had given the galaxy, not weapons or technology but a way of being, a choice to stand together instead of alone. The war against the void would be long and hard, many would die, but Chen Wei believed they would win, because for the first time in history the galaxy was fighting as one. And together they were unstoppable. The battle lines stretched across 3 star systems. Alliance ships from all 5 empires formed a wall of metal and fire against the advancing void. Admiral Chen Wei watched from the command ship Unity, the flagship of the combined fleet. "All units report ready," said Commander Park, now promoted to captain. "The Keithrani science vessels have positioned the Light of Hope generators. The Varrox heavy cruisers are in attack formation. Thraxian swarm ships are standing by. Moldari stealth craft have surrounded the main void concentration." Chen Wei nodded. "And our human ships?" "Leading the center line, as requested." It had been Chen Wei's idea. Human ships were not the strongest or the fastest, but they would lead the charge. It was a symbol, a statement to the entire alliance. "We are in this together. We will not ask others to die for us. Begin the operation." The fleet moved forward. Light of Hope generators powered up, creating a barrier of energy that pushed back the void. The shadow creatures screamed without sound, their forms dissolving where the light touched them. But the void were many. For every one destroyed, 10 more appeared. They were not just an army. They were an infection spreading through space itself. "Admiral, the void are concentrating on Sector 7, reported a Keithrani sensor operator. "They are trying to break through our line." "Reinforce that sector. Send the Varrox battle group." High Lord Zarek's voice crackled over the communication channel. "We are moving now. Let these shadow creatures taste Varrox steel." His ships plunged into the heart of the void concentration. They fought with the fury of warriors who had finally found a worthy enemy, but even Varrock's courage could not stop the endless tide. "We need more power to the generators," Chen Wei said. "If we increase power further, the generators will burn out," said Vextal, the Keithrani diplomat who had become one of Chen Wei's closest advisors. "We have perhaps 2 hours before complete failure." 2 hours, it was not enough time. The void were too many. Then a new signal appeared on the screens. Ships were arriving from hyperspace, hundreds of them. "Whose ships are those?" Park asked. Chen Wei studied the readings. Her heart swelled with emotion. "Everyone's, they are from everywhere." Ships from every world in the Alliance were arriving. Cargo vessels loaded with spare generators, medical ships to help the wounded, even civilian craft armed with hastily installed weapons. The people of the galaxy had seen their protectors fighting and dying. They had come to help. "This is civilian transport Hope's Light," said a voice over the channel. It was a woman, her voice trembling but determined. "We have 3 Light of Hope generators on board. Where do you need us?" "This is mining vessel Iron Fist," said another voice, deep and gruff. "We may be slow but we hit hard. Point us at the enemy." "This is Keithrani Science Academy ship Enlightenment. Our students have developed improvements to the Light of Hope technology. We are ready to implement them. Hundreds of voices, hundreds of ships, all coming to fight for their homes, their families, their future. Chen Wei felt tears on her face. She did not try to hide them. All ships, this is Admiral Chen Wei. Thank you all, form up on the main fleet. Let us show the void what the galaxy can do when it stands together. The reinforced fleet pushed forward. The new generators were deployed. The Keithrani students' improvements increased their efficiency by 40%. The void began to fall back. But the battle was not over. At the center of the void mass something new was forming, something huge. What is that? Park whispered. It was a void queen, the heart of the infestation, a creature the size of a small moon, pulsing with dark energy. It was the source of all the shadow creatures. If it was not destroyed, the void would keep coming forever. We need to get close enough to hit it with the light of hope, Chen Wei said. But anything that approaches will be consumed. I will go. It was Crickstor. He stood beside Chen Wei, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. He was no longer the young warrior who had come to learn from humans. He was now vice commander of the Alliance fleet, respected by all species. The void cannot consume ships as easily as living matter, he said. My ship has extra armor. I can get close enough. You will not survive. Perhaps not, but the Alliance will. That is what matters. Chen Wei looked at him. She remembered the first time they met, when he was full of questions about human ways. Now he understood better than most. You have become a true leader, Crickstor. I had good teachers. He saluted her in the human style. It has been an honor, Admiral. He left the bridge and boarded his ship, a modified Varox cruiser named Shadow's End. It was the most heavily armored ship in the fleet, designed specifically for suicide missions. But he would not be alone. This is mining vessel Iron Fist. We are coming with you, Varox. Someone needs to watch your back. This is civilian transport Hope's Light. We did not come all this way to sit back and watch. We are joining the charge. One by one, a dozen ships fell in behind Crickstor. Different species, different designs, but one purpose. They plunged into the heart of darkness. The void struck at them from all sides. Ships died, their crews giving their lives to push forward, but they kept going. We are almost there, Crickstor reported. His voice was calm, even as his ship was torn apart around him, preparing to deploy Light of Hope generators at maximum power. Vice Commander, your ship integrity is at 12%. That is enough. The Shadow's End reached the Void Queen. Crickstor activated the generators. Light exploded outward. The Void Queen screamed, a sound that echoed through the minds of every being in the system. Its massive form began to dissolve. But it was not dead yet. With its last strength, it struck at the Shadow's End. The ship was engulfed in darkness. Crickstor, Chen Wei shouted. Static on the channel, then impossibly a voice. Still here, Admiral, but I cannot hold much longer. Finish it. All ships with generators converge on the Queen. Give it everything you have. The fleet closed in. Light of Hope beams struck the Void Queen from every direction. It thrashed and screamed and tried to escape, but there was nowhere to go. In its final moment, it lashed out one last time. A wave of dark energy swept through the fleet, damaging ships and killing crew, but it was too late. The Void Queen exploded into nothing. Across the galaxy, the remaining void creatures simply stopped. Without their queen, they had no purpose. They dissolved into darkness and were gone. The war was over. Chen Wei slumped in her command chair. Around her, the bridge crew were cheering, crying, hugging each other. Varox and Human, Keithrani and Thraxian, Moldari and Synthax, all celebrating together. Admiral, said Park, we are receiving a signal from the Shadow's End. It is very weak, but... Chen Wei straightened, put it through. Admiral, Crickstor's voice was barely a whisper. Did we win? We won, Vice Commander, we won. Good, then it was worth it. The signal faded. Rescue ships were dispatched, but by the time they reached the Shadow's End, there was little left. Crickstor was found in a sealed compartment, barely alive. His body was broken, but his spirit was not. He would recover. It would take years, but he would recover. The galaxy celebrated for weeks. Every world held festivals. Every species honored the dead and praised the living. For the first time in thousands of years, there was no war anywhere. But Chen Wei did not celebrate. She was already thinking about what came next. The war had united the Alliance, but wars end. What would hold them together now? She called a meeting of the Alliance Council. All the representatives gathered, including Crickstor. who insisted on attending even though he was still in a medical support chair. "The Void are defeated," Chen Wei said, "but our work is not done. We built this alliance to fight an enemy. Now we must build it to last." "What do you propose?" asked High Lord Zarek. "A permanent government, a constitution that protects all species, education programs to teach our children to understand each other, trade agreements that benefit everyone, research projects that pool our knowledge, a future built on cooperation, not competition." Vextal nodded. "The mathematics support this. Combined resources would increase efficiency by over 300%. "It is more than mathematics," Chen Wei said. "It is about what kind of galaxy we want to live in. We have proven we can fight together. Now we must prove we can live together." The debate lasted for months. There were disagreements, arguments, and moments when everything seemed ready to collapse. Some species wanted more power. Others wanted more independence. Old hatreds threatened to resurface. But in the end, they agreed. The Galactic Alliance became the United Federation of Worlds, a government of equals where every species had a voice. Chen Wei was offered the position of First Chancellor. She declined. "This must not be about any one person," she said. "It must be about all of us." Instead, a council of 7 was chosen, one from each species, including humanity. They would lead together, make decisions together, and be responsible together. Krixtor, now fully recovered, was chosen as the Varrock's representative. It was fitting. He had learned from humans and taught his own people. He understood both worlds. "What will you do now, Admiral?" he asked Chen Wei after the ceremony. "I do not know. I have been fighting for peace my whole life. Now that we have it, I am not sure what comes next." "Perhaps you should rest. You have earned it." Chen Wei smiled. "Rest sounds nice, but I suspect there will always be more work to do." She was right. The United Federation faced many challenges in the years that followed: economic disputes, cultural misunderstandings, crime, corruption, the problems that came with any large organization. But the Federation survived. It grew stronger. It learned from its mistakes. And through it all, the spirit of humanity guided its path. Not the humans themselves, but what they represented: hope, courage, the belief that different beings could live together in peace. Generations passed. The war against the Void became history, then legend, then myth, but its lessons remained. On the anniversary of the victory, a statue was unveiled in the central plaza of Nexus Station. It showed figures from all 6 species standing together, hands and arms and appendages linked. At the center was Admiral Chen Wei, her face looking up at the stars. At the base of the statue were carved words in all languages of the Federation. "Together we stand. Together we rise. Together we are eternal." The war had ended. The peace had begun. And it would last for 10,000 years. 500 years after the defeat of the Void, the United Federation of Worlds was the most successful civilization the galaxy had ever known. Wars were a distant memory. Disease had been conquered. Poverty was unknown. Every being, regardless of species, had the opportunity to live a full and meaningful life. But nothing lasts forever. Chancellor Zyla stood at the viewing window of her office on Nexus Station Prime, watching ships come and go from 100 different worlds. She was the 47th Chancellor of the Federation, a Moldari who had chosen a fixed form for her time in office. It was a statement of stability in uncertain times. And times were becoming uncertain. "The report from the outer territories is troubling," said her advisor, a young human named James Chen. He was a distant descendant of Admiral Chen Wei, though few people knew that. He did not trade on his ancestor's name. "What does it say?" "Discontent is growing. Some worlds believe the Federation has become too centralized. They want more autonomy." Zyla sighed. "This is not new. There have always been tensions between the center and the edges." "Yes, but it is worse now. 3 colonies have formally petitioned for increased self-governance. 2 more are threatening to leave the Federation entirely." "Leave?" Zyla turned from the window. "That has not happened since the Thesson incident 200 years ago." "The Thesson incident was resolved peacefully. I am not certain this will be." The Chancellor studied her young advisor. He was talented and dedicated, but sometimes he was too pessimistic, or perhaps she was too optimistic. "What do you recommend?" "We should send a diplomatic mission, someone who can listen to their concerns and find a compromise." "And who would you suggest?" James hesitated. "There is someone, a professor at the Academy. She specializes in conflict resolution. Her name is Elena Park." Zyla raised an eyebrow. "Park, another descendant of the old heroes." Yes, Chancellor, but she has earned her position on her own merit. Her work on the Varrox-Keithrani reconciliation project was remarkable. Very well, send her, but tell her to move quickly. I do not want this situation to get worse. Alina Park was not what most people expected. She was small and quiet, with gray hair that she never bothered to style. She dressed simply and spoke softly. On first meeting, no one would guess she was one of the most skilled negotiators in the Federation. Her shuttle arrived at the colony world of New Horizon 3 days after leaving Nexus Station. New Horizon was a human-majority world, which surprised many people. Humanity had been the driving force behind the Federation. Why would a human world want to leave? Alina understood better than most. The Federation had been built on human principles, yes, but those principles had evolved over 500 years. What the Federation was now was not necessarily what humans had imagined. The colony governor, a large man named Marcus Stone VII, met her at the spaceport. His family had produced many military leaders over the centuries, though there had been little need for soldiers in recent times. Professor Park, he said, his voice formal, welcome to New Horizon. Thank you, Governor. I appreciate you meeting me personally. I wanted to make sure you understand our position before you draw any conclusions. They walked together through the spaceport. Alina noticed that the buildings were decorated with symbols of old Earth. Flags, emblems, images of places that no longer existed. It was a statement of identity. Your world seems very connected to its human heritage, Alina observed. We believe in remembering where we came from. Is that why you want to leave the Federation, to return to human roots? Stone stopped walking. He looked at Alina with sharp eyes. We do not want to leave the Federation, Professor. We want to reform it. Reform it how? The Federation was created to unite different species against a common enemy, but the enemy is gone. What is left is a bureaucracy that treats every world the same, regardless of their needs. Keithrani worlds get the same resources as Varrox worlds, even though their populations and requirements are completely different. That is the principle of equality. Equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. The original Federation understood this. The current Federation has forgotten. They reached a meeting hall where a dozen representatives waited. They were not all human. Alina saw Varrox, Keithrani, and Moldari among them. This was not a human rebellion. It was a regional one. Please, Professor, Stone said. Sit, listen, try to understand. Alina sat, she listened, she asked questions. The representatives spoke for hours. They described inefficient systems, rules that made no sense for their situation, resources that were diverted to the core worlds while the outer territories struggled. They were not angry exactly. They were frustrated. They felt ignored. Alina took notes and said little. When the meeting ended, she thanked everyone for their honesty. What will you tell the Chancellor? Stone asked. I will tell her the truth, that you have legitimate concerns, that the Federation needs to listen. Stone looked surprised. You believe us? I have no reason not to. You have presented facts, not feelings. That is respectable. She returned to her shuttle and began her journey back to Nexus Station. Along the way, she visited 4 other worlds. Each had similar stories. The Federation was not failing, but it was not adapting. It had become comfortable. Her report to Chancellor Zyla was thorough and honest. They are not rebels, Alina said. They are citizens who feel disconnected from their government. The Federation has become too large and too slow to respond to local needs. Zyla read the report carefully. What do you recommend? Decentralization. Regional councils with real power to make decisions for their areas. The central government should handle only matters that affect all species, like defense and interstellar trade. That is a major change. Yes, but the alternative is worse. If we do not change, we will face breakaway movements that could tear the Federation apart. The Chancellor was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I will present this to the Council. It will not be easy. Many will resist. Change is never easy, but it is necessary. Alina returned to her teaching duties, but she was called back to Nexus Station within the month. The Council had approved her recommendations, but they needed someone to implement them. She became Special Envoy for Regional Autonomy. It was a new position, created specifically for the task of restructuring the Federation. It took 10 years. There were arguments, setbacks, and moments when everything seemed ready to collapse, but Alina never gave up. She traveled to hundreds of worlds, listened to thousands of voices, and found compromises that worked. The Federation did not become perfect, Nothing ever is, but it became better, more responsive, more flexible, more alive. When Alina finally retired, she was celebrated as one of the great reformers in Federation history. She laughed at this and said she had only done what any reasonable person would do. "All I did was listen," she said. "That is the secret, you know. If you really listen to people, they will tell you what they need, and if you help them get it, they will follow you anywhere." Her words became famous. They were taught in schools across the galaxy, but Alina did not care about fame. She returned to her small apartment on Earth and spent her remaining years writing history books for children. She died peacefully at the age of 112. Her last words were, "I wonder what comes next." No one knew, of course. The future was always uncertain, but because of people like Alina Park and Chen Wei before her, and all the others who had worked for peace, the future was bright. The Federation continued to evolve. It faced new challenges. New threats emerged. New problems arose, but the spirit remained. Humanity had given the galaxy something precious. Not weapons or technology or power, but a way of thinking, a way of being. Together, it was such a simple concept, so obvious that it seemed strange anyone had ever needed to learn it. But the galaxy had been divided for so long that togetherness was revolutionary. Now it was normal. On the 1000th anniversary of the Federation, a celebration was held on every world. Beings of all species gathered to remember the past and dream of the future. They told stories of the old heroes. They sang songs of unity. They made promises to continue the work. At the center of every celebration was a simple symbol. 6 figures, representing the 6 founding species, standing hand in hand around a circle that represented the galaxy. Together we stand. Together we rise. Together we are eternal. The humans in the crowd smiled. They knew their ancestors would be proud. The journey was not over. It would never be over, but they had come so far. And they would go farther still. 10,000 years after Admiral Chen Wei first stood against the Varrox Empire to save Keithrani civilians, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The United Federation of Worlds had grown to include over 2,000 species from across the known universe. Wars were so rare that they were studied in history classes like ancient myths. Disease, poverty, and ignorance had been conquered long ago. But some things never changed. Elder historian Zinkrix stood before a gathering of young students from dozens of worlds. He was an unusual being, the result of genetic mixing between Varrox and Moldari lines that had become common over the millennia. He had 4 arms like his Varrox ancestors, and could shift his form like his Moldari forebears, though he rarely did so now. He was old, even by the standards of beings who lived for centuries. "Today," he said, "we discuss the most important question in history. Why did it work?" A young student raised her tentacle. She was from a species that had joined the Federation only 200 years ago. "Why did what work, Elder?" "The Federation, the Alliance, the peace, all of it." Zinkrix gestured at the world around them, the gleaming towers and peaceful gardens of the Academy world. For millions of years, intelligent species fought each other. War was the natural state of the galaxy, and then suddenly it stopped. Why? The students looked at each other, uncertain. They had all learned the history. They knew about Chen Wei and Crixtor and Alina Park and all the other heroes, but that did not answer the question. A small being with large eyes spoke up. He was descended from Keithrani ancestors. Because the void threatened everyone, the enemy forced them to unite. "That is partially true," Zinkrix said, "but the void were defeated thousands of years ago. Why did the unity last?" Another student, a mechanical being from the Synthax lineage, offered an answer. Because the structures they built were efficient. The Federation maximized resource allocation. Also true, but many efficient systems have failed. Efficiency alone does not explain it. A human student in the back of the room raised her hand. She had dark hair and kind eyes. Because of the humans. Zinkrix smiled. It was an expression he had learned from his human friends over the years. "Tell me more." The humans gave everyone something to believe in. They showed that species could work together, that differences did not have to mean conflict. They led by example. And why did the humans believe this? The student thought carefully. "I do not know. It seems like it should have been obvious. Why did no one else see it?" Zinkrix nodded. "That is the right question, and it is the one we have been trying to answer for 10,000 years. He walked slowly around the circle of students, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. "I have studied the old records. I have read the journals of Chen Wei, the memoirs of Crixtor, the letters of Alina Park. I have spoken with beings who knew them or who knew beings who knew them, and I believe I understand." He stopped and looked at each student in turn. The humans were young. They had only been in space for a short time before they met the other species. They had not yet learned that cooperation was impossible. They still believed it could work. "So it was ignorance?" asked the Keithrani descendant. "No, it was hope. The humans had suffered greatly on their home world. Wars, plagues, disasters. But they kept going. They kept believing that tomorrow could be better than today. That belief was so strong it became their defining trait." Zinkrix pulled up a hologram showing the original 6 species of the Alliance. The Varox believed in strength. The Keithrani believed in knowledge. The Thraxians believed in unity of mind. The Moldari believed in adaptation. The Synthax believed in perfection. And the humans believed in possibility. Possibility. The possibility that things could change. The possibility that enemies could become friends. The possibility that the universe was not fixed, that it could be shaped by will and effort and hope. He dismissed the hologram. "That is what the humans gave us, not technology or wealth or power. They gave us the belief that we could be better, and because we believed it, we became it." A silence fell over the students. They were young, most of them. They had grown up in a galaxy of peace and plenty. They had never known war or want. The struggles of the past seemed like stories from another universe. "Why are you telling us this, Elder?" asked the human student. Zinkrix looked at her. "Because nothing lasts forever. The Federation will face new challenges. New threats will emerge. New problems will arise. And when they do, you will need to remember why we built this in the first place." "What challenges?" "I do not know. That is the nature of the future. But I do know this. The same principles that built the Federation can sustain it. Hope, cooperation, the willingness to see others as partners rather than enemies." He walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Beings from 100 species walked together in the streets, laughing and talking and living their lives. It was beautiful. "Someday you will be the leaders," he said. "You will face decisions that seem impossible. You will be tempted to choose fear over hope, division over unity, power over partnership. In those moments, remember the humans. Remember what they taught us." The class ended and the students filed out. Most of them would go on to ordinary lives, becoming teachers and engineers and artists. A few would become leaders. 1 or 2 might change history. Zinkrix stayed at the window until the sun set. He was very old now. He had lived long enough to see the Federation grow and change and grow again. He had known heroes and villains, saints and sinners. He had seen the best and worst of every species. And he still had hope. A knock came at his door. He turned to see a young woman standing in the entrance. She was the human student from his class. "Elder, may I ask you a question?" "Of course." She stepped into the room, her eyes serious. "Do you really believe the Federation will last?" Zinkrix considered the question. "I believe it will last as long as we want it to. That is the secret. Peace is not a destination. It is a choice. Every day, every being in the Federation chooses whether to cooperate or compete, to trust or fear, to hope or despair. As long as most of us choose hope, the Federation will survive. And if we stop choosing hope, then we will fall, as every civilization before us has fallen. But that is not a reason for despair. It is a reason to work harder, to teach the next generation, to plant seeds for trees we will never see." The young woman nodded slowly. "My name is Maya Chen," she said. "I am descended from Admiral Chen Wei." Zinkrix was not surprised. He had recognized something in her from the first moment. The same quiet strength, the same clear eyes. "I know," he said. "I have been waiting for you." "Waiting." "There is a prophecy among my people. It is probably nonsense, but I have always liked it. It says that, when the galaxy faces its greatest challenge, a descendant of Chen Wei will rise to lead us." Maya looked troubled. "I am just a student. I do not want to lead anyone." "Neither did your ancestor, but she did what needed to be done, and so will you when the time comes." "What if I fail?" Zinkrix put a hand on her shoulder. "Then you will have failed while trying. That is all anyone can ask, but I do not think you will fail. The same blood that ran through Chen Wei runs through you. The same hope that saved the galaxy lives in your heart." Maya was silent for a long moment, then she stood straighter, her jaw set. "I will try," she said. "That is all I ask." She left and Zinkrix returned to the window. The stars were coming out, billions of lights against the endless dark. Somewhere out there, new challenges were forming. New threats were rising. The future was uncertain. But it had always been uncertain. That was the nature of existence. The question was not whether challenges would come, but how they would be met. The Federation would meet them with hope, with courage, with the same spirit that had transformed an interstellar war into a lasting alliance. Because that was what humanity had taught the galaxy. That was their greatest gift. Not weapons or technology, not wealth or power. Hope. The elder smiled and closed his eyes. He would sleep now. Tomorrow there would be more students to teach, more lessons to share. The work was never done. But that was all right. The work itself was the point. Together we stand. Together we rise. Together we are eternal. The words echoed through 10,000 years of history. They would echo through 10,000 more. And beyond that, for as long as hope survived. Which was forever. The story of humanity in the stars was not a story of conquest or domination. It was a story of connection, of reaching out across the void and finding others like themselves, of choosing to build rather than destroy. It was a story that would never end. Because every generation added new chapters. Every being who chose hope over fear wrote a new line. Every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, every choice to see the stranger as a friend rather than an enemy, all of these were part of the ongoing tale. And the tale was glorious. Admiral Chen Wei would have been proud. She had started something that grew beyond anything she could have imagined. From her one act of courage, saving Keith Ronnie civilians she had never met, an entire civilization had been born. That was the power of hope. It multiplied, it spread, it grew. And it never, ever died. On a small blue planet called Earth, in a museum dedicated to the founders of the Federation, children gathered around a statue of a woman in an old-style uniform. She stood tall, her eyes looking up at the stars, her hand reaching out as if to grasp the future. A plaque at the base of the statue read, Admiral Chen Wei, First Coordinator of the Galactic Alliance. She taught us that courage and compassion are stronger than fear and hate. One of the children, a small girl with curious eyes, tugged at her mother's hand. Who was she? She was the first, her mother said. She showed us the way. The way to what? Her mother smiled and knelt down to look into her daughter's eyes. The way to each other. The girl looked back at the statue for a long moment. Then she nodded, as if she understood. Perhaps she did. Perhaps hope was something that lived in the blood, passed down through generations. Perhaps it was the most human thing of all, and the most alien and the most universal. Perhaps it was the only thing that really mattered. The stars continued to shine. The galaxy continued to turn. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, beings of 1,000 different shapes and sizes lived their lives in peace. Because once, long ago, a human had chosen to stand up for what was right. And everything had changed. Forever.